Welcome back to Relatable Wisdom, the podcast where people share the quotes that shaped how they see life, helping us find our own moments of clarity in the beautiful messiness of being human. Today's guest is Leah Chrest, a Christian meditation teacher and author who believes that knowing who we are in God changes everything. She's walked through profound loss and an unexpected joy, always leaning into the gentle guidance of the Holy Spirit with a faith that's both rock solid and tender. Let's step into Leah's word for a few minutes and hear the words that have anchored her heart. Can you tell us your name and what you do?
Yeah, my name's Leah Chrest. I am a author, blogger, YouTuber, mom, stepmom, and math teacher. But the heart of what I do is loving the person in front of me one day at a time and just taking care of the people in my life.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for being a guest on the podcast.
It's an honor. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah. What's your favorite quote?
So this is more of like a motto that I live with, and it's look for the lesson. Yeah, I think so often we can have situations in life that put us into an emotional state of resistance where we're pushing against life and we're fighting what's happening instead of just opening up to what's going on and accepting and being in a place of gratitude. And so looking for the lesson in struggles allows us to shift from resistance to acceptance, from anger and frustration to gratitude. And that process opens up just so many more possibilities in our lives. So that's kind of what I live with. Look for the lesson.
Yeah, okay. Would you be kind enough to share personal instances where the quote played out itself in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to start with the smaller examples and end with the biggest.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes it's easier to accept that sort of idea of looking for the lesson in something that's a little bit smaller before jumping to the really hard stuff. So the most basic example going through right now is we are remodeling our basement in our house. And so we have a split level home. And that means that for at least 3 days a week when my stepkids are here, there are 6 people, a dog, and 2 cats living in just our upstairs. And our upstairs is fairly small. You have 3 small bedrooms, hallway, 1 bathroom, living room, kitchen. And it's tight. It's definitely a tight spot, and we've been that way for 2 months. And at first, I could complain about it. And instead of doing that, instead of seeing that as something I'm pushing against, when is this project going to be over? When can we have our whole house back? Instead of that, I look for what we can learn from this process. And it has been such an opportunity to watch the 4 children bond because they're having to share rooms. They're having to spend more time together. Even the cats and the dog are learning to get along better. Like everyone's chipping in. We're looking for those opportunities to work as a family unit to make this situation be okay. Whether that's sharing the bathroom, hey, I need to go in 5 minutes, can you wrap up? Instead of yelling at each other. Or cleaning up our shoes so they're not scattered over the only place we have to walk in the upstairs. Whatever that is, everyone's doing their part. And so we're all kind of leaning into that, hey, this is an opportunity for us to bond and get closer together, and let's make good memories of this instead of this time that we just want to push behind us.
Okay.
So that's a real basic example, but it's a huge shift from resistance to acceptance. Any questions, or should I go to the second?
Proceed.
Okay. The second's a little bit more difficult. And this is one of my sons. He's going in middle school this year, but when he was in elementary school, he was going through some tough emotional times, which you'll understand when I get to my third story. And there were a lot of days when he could not make it to school. He just wasn't feeling emotionally well enough to make it to school. And this was something I really struggled with, not only on the front of, at the time I was a single mother and was trying to work out childcare for him and getting myself to my job, but also the idea of my kid's not going to school and this isn't good. I need to get him to school. I need to have him push through this. And he's emotionally unwell. And so there was a lot of stuff going on. And again, lean into the lesson. What is the lesson here for me, for my son? And it really brought me back to my own childhood. My dad, my grandparents, they all had this culture of performance, whether it's at your job, whether it's at school, be a straight A student, work your butt off at your job. And that's healthy in some ways, but maybe taken a little bit to the extreme. And my son still had straight A's. He was still making the grade, but he was taking care of himself. He knew when to say, look, school's important, but I'm more important. And today, I need to take care of me so I can be the best person I can be. And so I leaned into that. Of course, I helped him to get back to school and to get the mental health care he needed. But I also let go of my own hold on needing to be perfect myself. And, that was just a huge growth opportunity where I'm a high school teacher. And because of my son, I now actually take leave occasionally just to go, for instance, my husband's birthday. We took off both of our jobs and had a day together and had moments that before I would have said, no, I can't take off of work. But we are more important than our jobs. We are so much more than that. And it was my son who taught me that. So instead of resisting and pushing back and saying, oh, this is a crisis, to say, okay, what can I learn here? And it really opened me up and him up. And I tell him all the time, thank you for showing me.
Let's take a quick pause. If you're enjoying this conversation and want more thought-provoking ideas straight to your inbox, join the Relatable Wisdom email list. It's free, quick, and filled with bite-sized insights, inspiring quotes, and behind-the-scenes reflections from our guests. Just head to relatablewisdom.com/join. That is relatablewisdom.com/join. Or tap the link in the show notes. And hey, subscribing to the podcast helps more than you think, and it's free. So if you haven't already, hit that follow button wherever you're listening. All right, let's get back to the conversation.
Where I needed to heal. And thank you for teaching me how to take care of myself. Okay. But go to school. Okay. When he can. So we had that relationship.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. That's the second.
That's the second. So the third is the hardest one. And I think, a listener would probably be thinking, okay, that's all well and good, but what about? And you have something in your mind. Like, where's the lesson in this, or how do you turn this into something good? And so my biggest example of this, and the one that changed my life, is the loss of my husband. My first husband was an alcoholic, and he died of liver cirrhosis. So that situation of suddenly being a single mom with 2 kids and losing, this man who I had loved very dearly, and it was, we knew he was sick, but it was a surprise the day he died. Like, we didn't see that coming. So it was a shock. Everything was just very, very difficult. And again, there was that opportunity to say, okay, this isn't a fun situation to be in, but can I look for the lesson? Can I look for how we can grow, my sons and I, through this? And, I was told by many people those first couple of days, you're just going to have to survive the next year of your life. Just survive. And that didn't sit right with me. I felt like, for my faith, that there was more to life than just surviving. I wanted to thrive. I wanted my children to thrive. I wanted them to look back at this time as something that was difficult, but that formed them into the men who they would eventually be. So I leaned very, very hard into my faith. I leaned really hard into my faith in God. And I realized that my greatest fear had been losing my husband. Since before we even got married, I lost my mother when I was a baby. And I watched my dad go through being a widower. And, how that process went for him. And so I was terrified of losing my spouse. And when I leaned into that, okay, I lost mine, now what? I realized, my goodness, I just faced my greatest fear, and I'm okay. Maybe not great at first, but I'm still okay. And that actually led me to be free of fear, because I faced my greatest fear head on. I could be free of fear entirely. So that was just an absolute blessing to be free. And nothing scares me anymore. Absolutely nothing scares me. And then I was able to take that surrender, take that looking for the lessons throughout that whole year, and look for the blessings. I look for those moments of camaraderie where people came around me and my boys and supported us and helped us and lifted us up, and they were there for us. Like, for instance, my the 2 sons, their gym teacher came to their football and baseball games that fall because they knew Dad wasn't there, so they came. How cool is that? Seeing the grandparents and the uncles and everybody just come in and take care of us, and looking into that. Okay, what am I learning about family? What am I learning about what it means to be there for each other and to depend on others? So many things. And then it takes me up to now. 4 years later, I did eventually remarry, but the story of that that process of healing from grief has become a way for me to teach and help others who are going through the same thing. So by leaning into that lesson, I was able to give back. So as I say, my husband didn't die in vain. Like all that we went through, all that my children and I went through together, can now serve to help others. And how beautiful is that? So there's so many opportunities to look for good, to be grateful, to go from resistance to acceptance in any situation in life, whether from the simple, like sharing the upstairs of a house together for a couple months, to the intermediate of some mental health stuff. And obviously now you understand it was, the grief that my son was going through. Or the huge, losing a spouse or addiction or whatever it might be. There's a lesson, there's opportunity for growth, there's opportunity for goodness if we just step back and allow.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing those personal stories. It perfectly paints the picture of what you mean by look for the lesson. One thing I would love to point out is the fact that most persons, when they have experience, they learn the wrong lesson. They learn lessons that instead of working for them, instead of serving, the lessons work against them and brings them.
So how do we find the right lesson? That's a beautiful question. I think the most important roadmap, the perfect guide, is emotions. When we are in alignment, and I'm a Christian, but this is true for any faith background or none at all, just spiritual. We are in our connection to the divine when we feel peace, love, joy. You can feel conviction. Okay, that can be a positive emotion. You can feel those sorts of things. But if you're feeling anxiety, fear, a lot of times that's a sign that, oh, maybe I'm looking in the wrong spot here. Even with the loss of my husband, yes, I felt grief, but those good cries, when I just would let that emotion pass through me, because I had those days where it just felt, and instead of pushing it back and saying, I'm not going to look at this, I'm just going to shove it to the side. I got to be strong for the kids. I learned real fast day one that wasn't helpful. Number one, it wasn't showing the kids proper, healthy grieving to bury it and just pretend everything's okay. And second of all, it actually made it worse. And so I felt it. I allowed to just let the emotions flow through me. Whether I was in front of a classroom, I just needed to cry a second, I'd step out, cry a minute. Or whether, my kids saw me crying at the dinner table a little, and we would talk about that, whatever needed to happen. Allowing those things to happen, that shifts it from a negative thing that you're pushing down, you're resisting, to one of allowing. Okay, I'm just going to cry. And those cries became, I don't want to say it felt good, but there was a release. There's a positive feeling of everything's okay. I'm crying right now. I'm feeling the loss, but I'm okay. I'm safe. So I think that when we feel the fear, we have to look at that and say, okay, why am I feeling fear? Embrace it, sit with it, see if you can go back to love. And if you're feeling like a conviction of a lesson and you're still in a place of fear, don't act on it yet. Get to that place of peace, get to that place of love, and then act. I can point to my time as a codependent wife. You said my husband was an alcoholic, and before he became sober, there were a lot of times that I was wrapped in fear and I acted on that fear. So for instance, one of my college roommates was getting married and I was afraid that my husband wouldn't be able to handle the kids that night. And he was pushing back on me going to the wedding. And so in fear, I didn't go. I said, I'm not going to go to the wedding. And I should have been there. I really should have been there for my friend. And I regret that. There's so many things I could have done, but I was reacting in fear, trying to fix it. Well, maybe I need to do this. Maybe I need to worry about being a better mom than being a friend. Being a mom's more important. But that was coming from fear. Whereas if I had had time to sit with it and just be with that emotion, I would have seen, okay, that's from fear. Where's the peace? Peace is maybe call my parents or call a neighbor. Hey, can you watch the kids tonight? My husband's not up to it, but I really need to be there for my friend. And then feel that peace, lean on the community. And so again, watching the emotions, if it's coming from a place of fear, anxiety, step back, come to a place of peace, then act.
Yeah. I know it's important to. Thanks for helping us go through the framework of telling the right lessons.
Yeah.
Yeah, because people end up learning lessons from things that happen to them that don't serve them. I give an example. Two kids, twins, right? They had an alcoholic father, right? And one became like well-to-do. The other one became an alcoholic. And so when you ask the alcoholic, you're like, why did you become an alcoholic? He was like, well, it's obvious. My dad was an alcoholic, right? And then you ask the other one who became well-to-do, and he was like, oh, why did you? How come did you became well-to-do? He was like, well, it's obvious. My dad was an alcoholic. And so one will look at you like, okay, wait, well, how come we're having different outcomes if the same, if it's the same person that they're learning from? What is going on here?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can't explain the difference in that. But I can't imagine that the person leaning into alcohol was leaning from a place of peace. I mean, yeah, you might go into that from a place initially of that, or honestly, the other thing is, this is tough to say, but alcoholism can be genetic, and maybe that one kid reached for that first drink and then couldn't stop. Maybe they just kept going back because of the biological piece. But assuming there wasn't a biological piece there, I would imagine that can you need to go back was stemming from some sort of feeling of lack. Because I think a lot of what we do when we learn the wrong lessons, it's because we are stuck in a lack mindset of what do I need to do to get more, to be more, to look cool, to do whatever that is, to get that job, to get that girl, because I don't have enough in here. We're not looking in here. And that person who maybe chose not to do that, was well-to-do, they still are striving to be the best they can be, of course, but I bet there was something in, hey, I saw my dad's path. I don't want that for me, and I have value. I know I've got worth. I'm going to take care of that worth. I'm going to take care of people I love. I'm going to make decisions that are going to build myself up in the ways that matter because I love me, and are going to take care of the people I love because I love them. And again, that's a very different thing than the fear, the lack, that I don't have enough, so I'm going to do this so I can get that, And there's a difference between true self-love and true self-care and that ego care, right? Like that true self-care is I value me and I'm doing the best I can for me versus that ego care is get that next, Batman's and Robin's Sunday or, get that next pay raise, get that hot girl. And that's just like, just feathers in the cap or hot guy in my case, right? Whatever that might be, we're looking for what can add to this image of ourselves instead of what can add to what's truly in here. And so there's a lot to piece through. And I love what you're pulling from this. This is really a great conversation because, like you said, it's not always so simple. It's life is much more complex. And I think we need to be guided. For me, it's by my faith and by that connection with that, for me, the Holy Spirit, but inner guidance, divine power of whatever. But it's knowing that you have worth, that you are loved more than you can possibly imagine, and you're worth it. And if you're feeling like you are not, you're disconnected. And when you're disconnected, then that wisdom can't flow. So
Yeah,
get reconnected. And to do that, I mean, there's so many ways, but for me, I just sit and I just remind myself and I allow myself to be in the presence of that higher power and
yeah.
feel that. And when you're wrapped in that, then you can move forward in the ways that are going to be truly good for you.
Yeah, I've noticed when it comes to learning lessons, a lot of persons don't learn lessons because when things happen, they quickly run to the conclusion instead of asking themselves, okay, what happened, right? They're like, oh, they give you statements. Well, the reason I cannot do a podcast is because the network in my country is terrible. That's a conclusion. That's a statement. And then someone else will tell you, well, how can I make this? How is it that people who are in my country that are doing podcasts with the same terrible network, they are still able to make it work? How do they do it? So now it's a question of I'm expecting, I'm seeking, right? I'm hoping to find something, I'm searching rather than, oh yeah, it doesn't, let's pack up our things and go.
Oh, yeah. There's so many times when we limit ourselves, when we say that, this can't happen. We look for all the ways that it can't instead of saying, again, instead of look for the lesson, maybe look for the good, look for the opportunity. Like you said, no, what country are you coming from, Wisdom?
Nigeria.
Nigeria. Yeah, Nigeria.
Nigeria.
That sure, I bet there is like a lot of hurdles for you to get to do this, but you're doing it and very successfully. And, what a testament to leaning into opportunity leaning into growth, leaning into possibility. Again, accepting what is. Okay, I've got poor internet here. I may have this schedules may not work with some people who are going to be my guests. I got to figure this out, whatever it might be, but you're working through that and you're finding those answers. And I think it's another lesson, at least from my faith, is to realize that what the divine has in store for you is so much bigger and better than what you have in store for you, what you think you have in store for you. And maybe it's not what you think it is. Maybe you have you like tunnel vision, like I'm looking here, but maybe it's over here. And just to be open and again, follow that peace, follow that love, know that you're worth it. Know that you have so much more inside of you than you can possibly imagine. And I mean, proof's in the pudding for me, like my life, that year after my husband passed was the best year of my life so far to that point. And then it just got better from there because I leaned into it, because I said, I'm not the poor me. Everything happened. This is terrible. And now I got to struggle. And now I have this. It was, no, this is an opportunity.
Yeah.
What can I do to help others? What can I do to nurture, myself and others? And, when we lean into those opportunities, those positive, rooted in peace and love lessons, that's what leads us forward.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leah, for sharing with us your favorite quote and just sharing those personal stories to help illustrate the quote and drive it home.
Absolutely.
Where can my listeners learn more about you and what?
The easiest way is through my blog, thecontemplativechristian.com, thecontemplativechristian.com. And on my blog, I have links to both my books, At the Edge of the Jordan, and the one that you relate most to this conversation is It's Okay to Be Okay. Leaning into grief as a pathway to blessing and new life. And then it also has my YouTube channel, which I lead Christian meditations on, as well as all my social media. So it's a one-stop shop, thecontemplativechristian.com.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been an absolute delight chatting.
Yeah, it was great talking to you too. Thank you so much for the opportunity again.
You've been listening to Relatable Wisdom, and I've been your host, Wisdom Okonkwo. You've been listening to the podcast where every story, quote, and insight helps you see life a little differently. If you enjoyed today's episode, follow the show on your favorite podcast app and share it with someone who would love the conversation. For more inspiring voices and timeless wisdom, visit relatablewisdom.com. Until next time, keep living, learning, and collecting wisdom that matters most to you.